Hello everyone and welcome back. It's Zakiziel here, and tonight I'll be reacting to Lotara Sarrin, Old Man Lore by Old Man Reacts, as requested by Anzac A1. And as always, I highly recommend you check out Old Man's channel if you're not doing so already. He makes great content, and I recently finished reacting to his 10,000 subscriber specials, a three-part series about Commissar Sebastian Yarrick, which it's anyone who watches it can tell that a lot of effort and passion was put into it. It's great. You guys should definitely check it out if you haven't already. And there'll be a link to the original video in the description box below. So, and without further ado, let's see what the old man has to say about Lotara Sarrin, who, if I remember correctly, he was respected by both Karn and wait, was it also did Angron also respect her? I think he did. We'll see. Memory's a fickle thing.
We lost over 2,000 crew to the 13th Legion's bolters, you stupid horse son! The Ultramarines knew where to board us and where to strike. Not slave deck dregs and war fodder delvers. Trained, vital crew from the command and primary engineering decks. We sustained enough internal damage over several systems that the Conqueror won't function until she's been dry docked for a month or more!
Oh, so the ship's gonna be out of commission for a good while. Still, a month isn't too bad, and considering that warp travel can at times take years, just because it's the warp. You're lucky if you go in and come out in a reasonable time frame sometimes, and don't end up say catapulted 10,000 years into the future or sent back in time or some other nonsense.
Am I making myself clear, you arrogant swine? You have your orders. Now get out of my sight!
Immerse the burn in cool tap water or apply cool, wet compresses. Do this for about 10 minutes or until the pain subsides.
Of all the countless trillions who have existed in the universe of Warhammer 40k, there are only a select handful who are able to garner the true admiration of a group of Space Marines. They are usually men and women of such exceptional valor or outright utility that their talents or deeds simply cannot be ignored, or those possessed with such an iron will and determination that it demands respect. One of the first examples of this I saw, and the one that influenced the name I chose for this channel, was that of Sebastian Yarrick, who despite being ancient and immortal, commanded such respect that an entire room of Space Marine chapter masters remained respectfully silent when he spoke. The only one who did try to interrupt the Old Man of Armageddon found himself silenced by just a stare from the old Commissar, and later found that his impetuous barking at Yarrick garnered him shame. Even the Black Templar, who viewed baseline humans as little more than obstacles on a battlefield, stayed silent in respect of this man. Of those few mortals who have gained true respect among the Space Marines, there are far fewer still who can actually tell one of the Astartes what to do and expect them to obey.
Also, because if I remember correctly, the Space Marines are outside the normal chain of command, and they don't take orders from anyone except, I think it was like the Emperor and sometimes the High Lords of Terra. Like, basically that, like, outside of the Emperor are the High Lords and, well, also the Custodies, I assume, as well. Anyone else giving them orders comes more as a suggestion than anything else, I've heard.
And then, there is Lotara Sarrin.
Shit just got real.
Lotara Sarrin was the commander of the World Eater's flagship, the Conqueror, as it continued on its path during the Great Crusade and onwards into the Horus Heresy. We are not certain if she was granted the position by merit alone or by Angron's personal approval, but what is absolutely certain is she fit the position perfectly. Certain legions had very little respect for baseline humans, and the World Eaters were most certainly one of those legions. So what was it about Lotara Sarrin that caught the attention of not only Angron, but the rank-and-file troopers.
Well, given her fiery display earlier, I'm guessing that's one part of it. But I also imagine that given Angron's history as a gladiator, that he could respect her boldness.
I was this small, high-spire-born member of the nobility not only accepted but in many ways celebrated by the 12th. Out of a legion of bloodthirsty berserkers, Lotara Sarrin was perhaps even more bloodthirsty than they were. There is no finer example of a captain fitting the pure desires of her legion more perfectly. She would frequently ram the Conqueror into other vessels just to be cruel. She would close in and use a weapon system called the Ursus Claws to snare an enemy vessel so it could be boarded. She would actively and frequently establish communications with her enemies to mock and belittle them while she ran them down. While that would be enough to make any World Eater smile, she did more than just earn their humored admiration for simple yet pure aggression. In many cases, a captain showed deference to the Space Marines who were around, acting oftentimes as a subordinate to them. This was not the case with Lotara Sarrin.
Yeah, given how she just chewed them out in the beginning, it seems more like she was the one commanding them.
She made it perfectly clear to every man, woman, and Astartes that the Conqueror was hers, and hers alone. On most ships, the commanding officer of the vessel was called something to the effect of shipmaster or shipmistress, to avoid confusion with the Astartes rank of captain. Not Lotara. Even Angron could not call it his ship without being corrected. Lotara Sarrin was placed as commander of the Conqueror at the age of 29, only a few weeks before her 30th birthday. One of the youngest of any who would gain command of a ship of an expedition fleet, and the youngest who would gain command of a flagship. Her record held citations of extreme bravery, logistical gifts, and a brilliant tactical ability. She held a swathe of ribbons and medals, which she herself did not wear unless a situation absolutely demanded it. In fact, there was only a single honor that she had gained that she refused to be unadorned with, and that honor...
Wait, I may be sure, but that doesn't mean you're not about to experience the wrath of a god.
...came from the World Eaters themselves. While there is no story or any further research that could shed light on exactly what happened, we can make a few very well-educated guesses. Angron himself created a distinction specifically for Lotara after the World Eaters' war against the Anshul Stellar Principality. With every award, there is a citation that goes along with it, detailing why the award was received. Karn, captain of the 8th Company of the World Eaters and the one who gave her the distinction personally, worded it slightly differently than the servitors who marked it in her personal record. The mark that Lotara was given was Karn's right handprint on her uniform. The servitors recorded the citation.
Oh, wait. So if it was Karn's right handprint and on her uniform, I'm wondering then, and did he coat his hand in ink to do that first, or is that actually a blood stain?
Because of uncommon bravery, but Karn remembered it because of the absolute brutality and sheer list of kills she had made on that campaign in the Void. Only a year or so later, the Remembrancer Order was passed. The Remembrancer Order was to chronicle the last deeds of the Great Crusade. It was to be a legion of poets, sculptors, writers, pictographers, every make and model of artist known to man. Angron actually allowed the Remembrancers on board, but Lotara hated them. She had instantly become a target for every painter, sculptor, and pictographer from the Remembrancer Order during the Great Crusade.
Oh?
You just beat my microphone!
I'll just stay still. Yeah. That's it, just keep the mic nice and still. It's just because it's right in front of his face, that's all.
She had found herself followed constantly as she'd gone through her day-to-day affairs. Angron and the World Eaters, for the most part, had simply ignored them. But the second that Lotara expressed her distaste of them, he had thrown them off not only the flagship, but he had banished them from the fleet. It quickly became understood that to annoy Lotara was to annoy Angron. Karn had taken a personal amount of pleasure in being one of the Astartes tasked with removing the Remembrancers, and this was another reason that the World Eaters may have liked the small but vicious captain. She hated the poets and pictographers as much as they did.
I'm kind of wondering if it was if when he said that that they're thrown off. I wonder if he meant if it was a case of they were taken to the nearest Imperial world and left there, or what I imagine is probably more likely, they went out the airlock.
Lotara Sarrin could almost always be found at the throne of the Conqueror, with her feet kicked up, unless there was a battle happening, and sometimes even if there was one. Her relationship with her bridge crew was not formal whatsoever, as long as they obeyed her orders. She would joke with them even as much as she did with Karn, and often at her own risk with Angron. The Primarch and the First Captain obviously enjoyed her presence, as she was allowed to flat out mock them from time to time. There are many examples of her establishing comms with Angron and Karn to belittle them for their tactics in warfare, saying it would have been much more effective to just simply bombard the target from orbit.
It sounds like she had a good amount of playful banter with them, but that's as long as you're not annoying her. Or the instant you annoy her, it sounds like she just has a explosive temper.
She didn't spare any of her crew from this, but her verbal wit could go from playful to biting, especially with an enemy. During the Shadow Crusade, she openly mocked the Ultramarines' war regent of Valmatura.
So I was right. It was a case of playful banter up until you've annoyed her. At which point, yeah, venomous like a barking toad. Also explosive like a barking toad too.
With her crew grinning right along with her, which shows that this was far from her first time doing it. And then we have examples where she was not grinning. During a void engagement, 5 companies of the World Eaters had been tasked to stay on board the Conqueror in the event that the ship was boarded. These 5 companies, named the Triarii, were the best shipboard legionnaires in the entire Legion. Instead of staying aboard, the Triarii, under the command of Captain Delvaris, left the ship and went with the rest of the Legion down to the planet below.
Oh no. I'm guessing that because they decided to leave the ship when they were assigned there specifically to defend against boarding action, that some things happened, and that Lotara absolutely chewed them out for it.
They had told no one, not even Lotara, and had simply gone to the battle raging on the planet. This is remarkably important when the planet the World Eaters were attacking was inhabited by the Space Marines of the Ultramarines. It is also remarkably important to tell a captain who quite literally has a murder boner the size of the Conqueror itself when it comes to boarding other ships, that her entire complement of shipboarders and also defenders is not on that same ship. In other words, the Conqueror had tried to board an Ultramarines cruiser and instead was boarded by a company of Ultramarines. In most cases, when a Space Marine boards your vessel and you do not have Space Marines yourself to fight them off, the proper reaction is to put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye.
Yep. As anyone who, well, for people who aren't familiar with 40k, I really recommend checking out the Astartes animation that the guy made. That shows exactly like the sort of stuff that happens when you get boarded by Space Marines. Just a single squad of them can tear through dozens of normal humans without taking even a single loss.
Lotara Sarrin decided this would not be the way she would go about this boarding. Instead, she went down and woke up the dreadnoughts of the 12th Legion.
Oh.
For anyone unfamiliar with what a dreadnought actually is, it is an Astartes too wounded to live, sustained in a life support device, and placed in a mech suit. Setting dreadnoughts loose on your ship is usually a poor decision, as they tend to wreck anything smaller than a hab block, but needs most of the devil drives, and Lotara was driving hard at this point.
Yep. Also, see, the thing about dreadnoughts, the armaments they have, sure, they have the grabby arms that are great for, punching through things, and usually have underslung flamers attached to said arms for burning out infantry, but they can also have assault cannons and missile pods. And for anyone who's unfamiliar with 40k, an assault cannon, well, the best analogy is to imagine a Gatling gun and cross us with a, think, 20 or maybe 40 millimeter cannon.
After the crisis was over, Lotara settled affairs by finishing up the Void War, and then waited for the elements of the ground campaign to return to the ship. As the captain of the Triarii set foot on the Conqueror, Lotara decided to handle the lack of communication. Now, for those of you who still may be harboring unfamiliar ideas about the Space Marine, here are some options about how you deal with issues pertaining to the Astartes if you are immortal. Number 1. Keep your mouth shut and move on. This is oftentimes the best option with the smallest window of things going completely wrong for you. Number 2. Politely request the Astartes address the issue, say please and thank you, while staying at a respectful distance to avoid getting uppercut to the moon.
Yep.
Number 3. Gently bring up the matter to their superior, who may just grant you the attention you need to express yourself. If you hear laughter later, well, at least you tried. Or you could try number 4. The Lotara option.
Which is chewing them out and giving them such burns that the salamanders would be impressed. The doom music.
What is the Lotara option, you might ask? Let me inform you. Lotara was decidedly miffed at the fact that multiple systems had been damaged and over 2,000 crew had died when the Ultramarines boarded the Conqueror.
Oh, so that's what that rant at the beginning was for.
So when she saw Delvara, she decided to inform him of her displeasure, in perhaps the most direct way I've ever seen inform a Space Marine of anything. She pulled her sidearm and shot him in the face. Shot him in the face. She shot a captain of the World Eaters who was under the influence of the Butcher's nails right in the fucking face. To be perfectly clear, this is exactly how the Raven Guard found out that they and the Death Guard were not friends anymore.
Oh.
Now I can give all of my listeners right now perfect assurance that shooting at a Space Marine, even with a fucking Nerf gun, will cut your life expectancy drastically from a few decades to a few milliseconds. And
it will also usually drastically cut the number of appendages you have on your body as well.
Indeed, Lotara Sarrin suddenly found herself facing down quite the number of bolt guns which subsequently fired. If not for the timely intervention of a librarian, Lotara Sarrin would have been blasted apart at the seams. Did she cower and realize she just shot a captain of the World Eaters in the face and therefore she had stepped over the line? Fuck no.
Heck no.
She was speechless, but not because she had almost died. It's because somebody had the balls to shoot at her on her own damn ship. Am I in any way being unclear about how much of a badass this woman was? Delvaris got up, promptly drew his weapon, and is prepared to wipe her out of existence with a melee weapon bigger than she was. Did she run away? No. Did she tremble in fear like a rational person would at pissing off someone who would make Shaq look like a nerd side by side? No. As he was running up to her and multiple World Eaters jumped to her side, she spit on him. Now, the Triarii captain was understandably a bit miffed. A woman who didn't even come to his chest plate had just shot him in the face and spat on him when he got mad about it. Lotara had quite literally taken his pride and stomped on it in a hangar deck full of his legion. And after taking his pride, she then showed what she was going to give him in return. Not a single fuck. At this point, legionaries started lining up against each other. Some for Delvaris, but the World Eaters' destroyers lined up entirely for Sarrin. As if Delvaris wasn't already almost fried to a crisp by the sheer amount of heat of what Lotara had done to him, Sergeant Skane of the destroyers added even more of a burn.
You know, I am also in the back of my mind just going, oh, just wait until Angron hears about this.
When he asked if the captain was having a problem, Delvaris piped up and started talking. Skane cut him off and flatly told him he wasn't talking to him. He was talking to Captain Sarrin. What happened next is even more hilarious than before, and even gave Angron a chuckle when he heard of it. Even as Delvaris tried to salvage the shambling wreck of his dignity by talking down to Sarrin, she spat on him again. Once more, Delvaris tries to salvage what was no longer a shambling wreck of an ego, but a full-on bonfire. At that point, with the other legionaries laughing at him, Lotara Sarrin unloaded on him. Now I'm going to summarize the brutality of the verbal exterminatus she waged. She, number one, informed him that to him, she was Captain Sarrin, not Lotara. Number two, she told the 8.5-foot walking pile of muscles to go to his room and not come out until she said so.
So basically, she told him he was grounded, like a child.
Number 3, told him flat out the damage his neglect had caused. Number 4, brought the sexual decency of his mother into question. And number 5, told him to get out of her sight. And at this point, Delvaris had been owned so pitilessly that even a World Eater captain decided it would be best to shut the fuck up and go away. Later on, after Delvaris was allowed out by Sarrin, the World Eaters themselves handled Delvaris in their own way for breaking an oath and abandoning his duty. This is the utter batshit insanity of Lotara Sarrin, and this is why I love her. The story of Lotara Sarrin doesn't end there. No. Later on, she faced down a fleet of 40 ships with 3 battleships, and with her at the helm of the Conqueror, they inflicted so many losses that the Ultramarines were ultimately defeated after they landed on the surface of the planet because,
you know, with how fiery she is with both her temper and her words, you'd think that she was a Kadai.
they had lost too many ships in the void. And all the while this was going on, she was deliberately ramming derelict ships just for the fuck of it to kill more people, while she was harpooning other ships with the Ursus claws of the Conqueror. She was the definition of not fucking around. After this battle, and with the Conqueror in tatters, did she resign herself that her big beautiful baby Gloriana-class battleship needed repairs? No. She turned into a space pirate. She pulled into orbit of Heshimar, a planet who was joyfully cheering their arrival as they had sided with the War Master. Heshimar's nobles told them they would be able to give the Conqueror anything they needed. At that point, she decided that the planet might not actually be able to give them everything that they needed, but they sure had it. So to be blunt, she turned the World Eaters loose on a loyal world, and a week later the Conqueror left with plenty of food, water, iron, and other supplies, as well as a large slave population. Did she weep for what she had done to a loyal population? No, nope. But water was definitely involved. She took a hot bath. So relaxing. At this point, we really need to rename the Conqueror to Lotara Sarrin's big ol' fucking boat, because she proceeded to do this multiple times before she arrived at Terra for the last real battle of the Horus Heresy. While on the way there, the Conqueror had been the host of Angron, who was a demon prince by this time. The Conqueror,
thanks Lorgar, by the way,
quickly began to show signs that was being affected by his presence. Considering that Angron was a demon prince of Khorne and his legion was the World Eaters, this had a very pronounced trickle-down effect. In other words, the ship's water supply would randomly turn to blood, and the World Eaters would randomly lose their control and start attacking anyone around them. Being a human on the Conqueror was highly unadvisable at this point. If nameless things from the warp were not grabbing you from the dark and dragging you away, the World Eaters assigned to guard you from said nameless things would decide your head would make a good armrest for a chair. At this point, the Legion had risen well above the boiling point for batshit insanity, and most of them flat out admitted the ship was cursed. Skane of the Destroyers, who himself was doing everything he could not to lose control, approached Lotara Sarrin about essentially committing mutiny to flee the ship. The way in which he approached her left 2 of her personal bodyguards dead and had her aiming her pistol at his eye.
I'm guessing that she absolutely refused to abandon the Conqueror.
Lotara, who had seen more than her fair share of crew butchered, and who had been dealing with even more World Eaters barely clinging to sanity, may have seemed like a good choice to approach about leaving the Conqueror. What human in their right mind would want to stay on that ship? Lotara became the spokesman for the group that was trying to leave, with multiple World Eaters and several hundred crew. The plan was for them to leave the ship on board 4 supply vessels bound for other ship, as the massive battleship served as the granary for the attached fleet in many ways. Lotara came up with the plan, highlighted the details to all of them, and made sure none of them would foul it up in any way. When the time came, she went with the mutineers all the way, up until everyone was loaded on the supply shuttles.
Let me guess. once all the mutineers were on the supply shuttles and they left, she then proceeded to have the Conqueror's guns turned on them and blow them up, I'm assuming.
At that point, Karn showed up, and Lotara bitched at him for being late, and after Karn put Skane on the ground, Lotara shot him through the eye. She then ordered the Conqueror to kill 3 out of the 4 shuttles, saving 1 for last, only to mock the shuttle's occupants before killing them as well.
Knew it.
What is the ultimate fate of Lotara Sarrin? No one knows. The last we saw of her, she assisted Karn in teleporting Angron off the Conqueror, so she wouldn't have to worry about Angron killing the tech adepts that were keeping the reactors from overloading. The theories about her ultimate fate are all grim, but at the same time we will not know until possibly the last book of the Siege of Terra, if that. What is known is that while the ship was becoming corrupted by chaos, it showed what could almost be considered affection for her. One day she was lamenting about the death of one of her crew, who had been dismembered by Karn. Later that night, as she slept, the ship itself deposited the body of that crew member, intact, into her bed. She felt like, in the ship's own strange, insane way, it was trying to please her.
This kind of reminds me of how cats will bring their owners like dead birds and stuff like that. Which, by the way, I've heard the reason they do that is because they think that we don't know how to hunt, and thus are trying to teach each people how to do so by bringing them dead birds and whatnot.
What is known is that in the 42nd millennium there is a new captain for the Conqueror, but I do not believe that Lotara ever actually left the ship. Khorne, the Blood God, might have looked on the awe-inspiring power of the Conqueror and favored the bloodthirsty and savage captain who commanded it, and made them one. But that's just a theory. Let me know what you think down below.
Considering that a lot of
In any event, I'll see you guys next time.
considering that a lot of chaos ships, vehicles, buildings, etc. have faces like on them due to the effects of the warp, and may even have souls inhabiting them. I would not put it past as that she transcended mortality, so to speak, by having her soul merge with her ship and becoming part of it, which is also kind of funny in a way, because it also gives me the mental image of potentially the Conqueror having temperamental moments, similar to what a Arc Mechanicus may do when its machine spirit decides to wake up and starts doing things like shooting black holes at people. But that aside, it's been fun hearing about Lotara Sarrin and just all the stuff she does, and how she was willing to not just stand up to a space marine, but also do things that nearly got her killed because she just did not care. And if you guys enjoyed watching this with me, I'd appreciate if you like, comment, and subscribe. But until next time, I wish you all a wonderful night. Ta-ta!